Hello and welcome today. Today we're going to be doing a special video on resentments. We touched on these uh, things that we call resentments. We touched on them in part 3 when we did our podcasts and our Christian 12 steps, which you can find those podcasts at recoveredthroughchrist.com. Okay. I think it was in part 3 of our Christian 5th step where we went over resentments. Okay. I want to go into them in a little bit more detail today because of the fact that there are many people today, okay, who are in prison because of the resentment or resentments that they have had, okay? And resentments can be real or imagined. And if they are not addressed, when they do happen, okay, you can possibly be taking something out on yourself or some other person that has absolutely nothing to do with your original resentment. Okay, and anger can come up, and now you're lashing out. You're using this anger. You're lashing out on this anger towards someone who has nothing to do with the resentment that could have happened to you 10 years, 20 years, or 30 years ago. Okay, or you could be lighting up another cigarette, or taking out another drink, or another drug, because of this resentment that you have had. And every time you think about this, you light up another cigarette or take another drink, okay? And you cannot talk about it, okay? It's like having post-traumatic stress, okay? Every time you talk about it, or every time that you think about it, okay, you have some sort of negative reaction that happens to either you or the people around you. So you become a very, very angry person inside. You become a very hateful person, okay? But you don't want to be that type of a person because you're just going to keep injuring yourself and others in the process, okay? And so what I want to do is I want to let everyone know that resentments are healable. I was one of the most angry persons that I have ever known in my lifetime, and I was this way half of my life. I was the most angry person that you never want to meet. All right, and I'm going to go over these resentments. All right, most of them happened when I was younger. Okay, some have happened in the second half of my lifetime. All right, but started when I was in grammar school. All right, you talk about bullying. Well, bullying was going on for a long time. This is nothing that is new that just came about, right? I was one of these kids in school. I had my hands folded all the time. I knew all the answers that the teacher would ask. Whenever the teacher would want an errand run, she would pick me. I would be the one who would do the errand for the teacher. I was the teacher's pet. And every single boy in that 3rd grade class, I think it could have started happening even before this 3rd grade, okay? Hated me, they were jealous, they envied me, okay? And every single day at lunchtime or recess or even after school, I'm not talking about 1 or 2 kids now, I'm talking about the entire class would beat me up. I'd go home every single day with black eyes and bruises, right? And going to school as a young kid was very, very traumatic for me, okay? I began to resent all the kids in my class, okay? I could not understand why they were attacking me. I didn't have any clue, right? And my mother said to me one day, she said, well, what? And I was going to a public school at the time, and then she said to me one day, my sister was going to a Catholic school, and my mother said to me one day, she said, would you like to go to the same school that your sister goes to, and maybe the kids will not be that bad, right, at this other school? And I said, wow, yes, definitely, I want to get away from this school, no doubt about it, right? So I was very shocked when I walked into the playground the first day in this parochial school. And as soon as I walked into the playground, all the other kids, now this is again in 3rd or 4th grade, all the other kids saw that I was a new kid on the block, and they came up to me and they said, hey, They said, if you want to get into the gang, if you want to be protected, you're going to have to fight your way into the gang. Now I'm thinking right away, I got to fight the whole class like I just got done fighting the whole class, all right? But they told me that I didn't have to fight more than one person. All I had to do was beat one person, and I'd be in the gang, and then I'd have the protection of the gang. I heard one person, and I've spent years now fighting the whole class. I said, bring him on, right? I whipped this kid in like 2 seconds. I whipped him so fast because I had learned so much about fighting that they all said, wow. And they said, wait a second, they said, here's somebody else, fight him. Because what they wanted to do was, because the toughest kid in the class was always the leader of the gang, okay? I didn't know that. Sent me another kid, I whipped him. So after I whipped about 3 kids in a row, then they said to me, they said, well, now you've got a chance to be leader of the gang. You have to fight the leader of the gang now. And if you fight him, now this is all happening now, right in the playground. As soon as my first day, as soon as I walk in there, they say to me, they say, if you fight this kid, and you beat him, you will be the leader of the gang. Well, Gerald and I fought to a draw because the bell rang. So I was in the gang, and I had total protection and never had to fight again the rest of my, not only grammar school, but high school. I had such a good reputation. Nobody ever messed with me, okay? But before I got out of grammar school, I had developed such a great relationship with my father. My dad was my best friend. My dad and I went everywhere together. There was only me, my mom, and my sister. My sister was older than me, and she was, into girl things, and did a lot of things with my mother, and I did a lot of things with my dad. And he'd take me to the ballpark, like just about every Sunday. We'd go to the ballpark, and he would hit me fly balls, and he'd hit me ground balls. I always wanted to be a baseball player when I was younger, and he would be hitting me balls constantly for hours. And then at nighttime we'd be watching sometimes boxing and on the television and wrestling, and we'd be wrestling on the floor together. And a lot of times when he would go out to the store after he came home from work, and my mother say was cooking dinner or something like that, he'd take me with him to the store, but then the other times he wouldn't take me to the store. And I would sit at that window and not move because I saw where his car was going down the street and how it made a left turn to go to the store. And I'd sit at that window and I wouldn't move, I wouldn't budge. My nose was up against the window looking for him to come back. And if he didn't come back soon enough, I'd begin to cry. And then naturally, when I saw his car coming up the street, I became so happy. He was my best friend. My dad never held a grudge. He never held on to anger. He'd get mad and it was over and done with. He taught me about forgiveness. He taught me how to forgive and forget. Instantly, he could do that. He had that capability of doing that. He could be mad at you one time, and in 1 minute, and the next minute just be talking to you like nothing happened, And it was a fantastic relationship, a really good relationship. I had friendship, I had forgiveness, I had the father that every little boy wanted. And it was ideal, right? And my mom and dad, they were a perfect couple. They loved each other so much, And we owned a house, and I lived upstairs, and I had my own bedroom upstairs. But every once in a while, I would sleep downstairs on the couch. We had 2 couches, and one couch just happened to be by where the telephone was and the bathroom was. And one night when I was 13 years of age, on St. Joseph's Day, as a matter of fact, March 19th, 1963, I got woken up at 3 o'clock in the morning by my mom, and she was yelling and screaming, and I woke up, and I got up off the couch, and I looked, and I saw her on the telephone, which was in the hallway right by the couch, and she was stomping her feet and yelling and screaming over the phone, and I couldn't understand why she was yelling and screaming. And I surmised we had a nurse that we rented the place out to downstairs, so I guess she was stomping on the floor trying to get her attention. But then I heard some noise in the bathroom, and I went and I took a look inside the bathroom, and there I saw my dad. And he was throwing up blood over the toilet. And he threw up so much blood that it seemed like the toilet was overflowing with his blood. My dad was a big, strong guy. He was a factory worker. And he was able to walk out of that bathroom, walk into the kitchen. By this time, my mother had gotten off the phone. My sister was up. But he was very wobbly. They were trying to hold him up. They sat him down on a chair. He kept continuing to throw up blood. He asked my mother for a drink of water. And as she turned around in the kitchen to the sink to get him a drink of water, he threw up more blood on the kitchen floor. He fell off the chair and he died there in his own blood. I knew nothing about death. Never seen anyone die before. I didn't know what was happening. My dad had been sick, but he always bounced back. He was a big, strong guy. Nothing could ever keep my dad down. This was sudden, a shock. I knelt down next to my dad and I put my hand on his forehead to tell him everything was going to be okay, because I figured everything was going to be okay. I felt the hardness. I saw the whiteness of his body. I knew he wasn't going to be okay. We had a little dog. We kept out on the back porch at night, and this dog was barking constantly. Would not stop barking. The dog knew something was going on. My mother was hysterical. My mother could not stop crying and screaming. My sister was crying. All of a sudden, I saw my mom, and I wasn't able to do anything but feel for her, because she was so distraught. To this day, I can't believe that my mother ever did recover from that night. It's only by the grace of God that she did. And one of the priests, who was a friend of mine today, came to our house at 3 o'clock in the morning. And if he didn't do that, if he didn't sit with my mom, with his arm around my mother for several hours, I don't know where I would be today. I don't think my mom would have ever made it. I really thought she was gone that night. I became an angry young man. My best friend was dead. I had no more dad. I didn't even cry. I was so angry I couldn't even cry at the funeral. The same priest took me outside of the funeral and he says to me, he says, "Joe," he says, "It's okay, nobody's around. He says, it's time. You can cry now." Could not cry. It took me about 20 years to cry. God used a person that I was friends with who died within 6 months of getting cancer. He used this person after he had softened my heart, after I had come to believe in him. He used this person to get me to cry. And after I was crying forever for this person, I realized one day that I was finally crying for my dad. And you know, I also resented the fact that I had to hear for about 10 more years after my dad's death that I was the cause of it because I was such a brat. I resented the fact that some of the men in my life, like my Boy Scout leader, was gay. I resented the fact that I got my orders for Vietnam with a 2-year-old and a 6-month-old. I resented what I saw in Vietnam. I resented that after coming home from Vietnam, my next door neighbor took my wife and kids from me. I resented that ever since then, I could never be the father I wanted to be to them. I resented the fact that nobody wanted to talk to me about what it was like in Vietnam. I resented not getting thank yous. I resented being told never to talk about it, or never to wear my uniform. I resented being truly in love with a woman for the first time in my life, and her not loving me. I resented the fact that I could not live a perfect Christian life. I resented 9/11. I was working for the now mayor of New York City, Bloomberg. He was a Republican at the time. I was working his primary that day. It was primary day, 9/11. I had just drove by the World Trade Center on my way to Staten Island, New York, where I was going to work his primary. And I resented that my whole life was turned upside down for the next 18 months after that. But God put two people in my life during this time. One was a very devout Bible reader. We read the Bible together a lot. Another one was a very devout Catholic who showed me a lot about the Catholic faith that I did not know. Then I resented the fact that someone that I was close to, or I thought I was close to for many years, wound up being incarcerated, and I found out subsequently to that this person had lied to me about everything for the several years I thought I was close to them. I resented the fact when I tried to help this person, after they were incarcerated, they continued to use and abuse me. I resented the fact that my mom did not live to be 100. I thought for sure she was going to live to be 100. She was in great shape. She lived to be 88, though. I resented the fact that a man tried to kill me 3 times. And only angels of God saved me. But because of this, my career was ended shortly. But God had other plans. And shortly after that, I started these Bible studies on the internet. You want to talk about resentments? I've had a lifetime of them. I'm here today to tell you that they are healable, because I've been healed by every single one of them. Now, I want to tell you how to get this healing for yourself. It's not very difficult. As a matter of fact, it's going to cost you nothing. You won't even have to go and see anyone or sit down and talk to anybody. Just one person you have to talk to and that you have to see. His name is Jesus Christ. He wants you to come to him right now. He is waiting with his open arms outstretched. Tell him that you want him to heal you. Tell him you want a heart of his love. He is waiting for you. He's been waiting. Go to him right now. He loves you. More than anyone on this earth, he loves you. Resentments are healable. I strongly urge anyone who is fostering resentment to understand how much they're hurting you and other people around you. The TV doctors will put you on a guilt trip, tell you that you can control your resentments, you can control your anger. Jesus got angry, but if you see Jesus, he didn't hang on to his resentments. He got angry, but then the next minute he was healing someone. He is the only one. I tried many things throughout my lifetime. Nothing ever worked but Jesus. I pray right now that anyone who is watching this today, who has that inside of them that they cannot let go of because they tell you just to let go, let go. No, you need to be healed. You need to be healed. Nobody can just let go. Okay? That's a bunch of hogwash. You need to be healed, and Jesus is the healer. And he will heal you. Amen. God bless you. God bless you.